Talk about the other side of the two-sided market and what you encountered.
I will, and if it helps, I'll kind of like zoom in and try to zoom out and give you general advice on two-sided markets too. So I think when we talk about a two-sided market, the notion is fundamentally interdependence, right? So I'll do it if you do it, and you'll do it if I do it. But I'm not doing it first, and they're not doing it first. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So in our case, we couldn't get the doctor's offices without the advertising. We couldn't get the advertising without the doctor's offices. Okay, so how do we solve that? The way we solved it is we went to each side, and we said, if we had it, and this is where Seth calls it playing in the grate, I think, from his talk I picked up, more or less saying, hey, you know, we have this next year. Would you buy it? And you've got to get them to commit to buying it, right? So the key is they're buying it at a point in time that isn't now. But you've got to agree to get them to buy it. So with the doctor's offices, we did this in 5 markets all across the country. We got 200 offices to sign a form that said they would take an installation. Now, that didn't mean we were going to install it that week, and you know, we didn't announce that this was a trial and this might be a giant waste of your time. But we got them to commit to taking the installation. We simultaneously, and it's so key to do this at the same time, because if you don't do it at the same time, the whole thing crashes and you're dead. So it's really actually critical to get it right. At the same time, we went to the advertisers and got them to commit to buying the network. Okay? So it's kind of like, I call it a smoke bomb. We threw a smoke bomb in the room, and it existed anyway because they weren't talking to each other. So we didn't have to actually buy a smoke bomb. But we'd go on this side of the room, we'd get the offices and tell them, okay, we're going to get you up and running. We'd go to the advertisers, we'd get them, and the execution on this is critical. It's critical. So we do both simultaneously, and then by the day. I mean, it's got to be like a military operation. You cannot be late. Otherwise, it's fraud, right? I mean, you know, you're selling something that you don't have. And so it's very, very critical to get the methodology right on this. But you're doing 2 simultaneously, and then you go live, and you've got to deliver. Now, there are hacks around this. You can raise a bunch of money and seed your market. You can do other things to seed your market. And there are lots of great examples out there. I recently found out that Reddit, you know, they have a great, great product, right? But they went in there, and I heard this from a credible source. I think they've admitted this. And they got hundreds of fake accounts in the beginning. And they seeded their own platform with a bunch of activity that they were making so that when people went there, it was valuable. That's what seeding the market is. Okay, so that's part of it. Now the last other kind of 15-second thing I'd add on this is what you're doing is you're peeking into the future, right? You're being a visionary. So as an entrepreneur, you're saying, okay, neither you nor you are doing this right now. But if you were doing it, you would do it and vice versa. And next year at this time, I want that to be the case, right? So you're peeking into the future. So we peeked into the future in 2007, and we said, how many offices could we deliver? If we had air, because a lot of people go way too high. We had a competitor who was very well funded, had like, I think, 4,000 times the money we started with. No, we didn't start with much. That sounds like a lot. But they had a lot of money. They had a partner with CBS, Henry Schein, and they went belly up 3 years later. But they announced that they'd be in 65,000 doctors' offices. At their peak, they were in 180, right? That happens a lot. So you've got to peek into the future and be a visionary, but a realistic visionary, because you're going to be accountable for that execution. So that's how I think you see the market and you build a two-sided network.
It's a great point. I was talking to Matt Maloney from Grubhub about this the other day, and his comment was, he said, you know, the one thing you got to remember about these two-sided marketplaces is you can't lean too hard one way or the other. He said sometimes they'd put a lot of more money into marketing to try and lean into the consumer side of the market, but then they wouldn't have enough restaurants. And, you know, they're trying to lean in the restaurants that wouldn't be enough demand. Yeah. You really, that balancing act, this idea that you have this balancing act is really a critical element, I think, for people to get. A lot of questions here around the concept of founding, and I'd love to shift gears into it. Now, you guys have a founding team.
Yes.
And I think you had some other people involved in the founding time. Can you talk a little bit about what worked about having your founding team, what things you learned maybe the hard way, and the dynamics of finding the right partner and making that work?
I think for us, we were a little bit fortunate with ContextMedia because we had already, and all 3 of us, Derek, Rishi, and I had already worked on several different things together in college, different initiatives, organizations. I'd say as a founding team, the #1, what's most important is having clarity from day one but continuing to have clarity. Because day one, you might all sit down and have the same vision for the company. But at some points, people are going to start thinking in different directions and continuing to recalibrate and make sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction. And everyone trusts and delegates in situations to one person and not all three. I mean, I think one of the most critical things was taking ego out of it and just saying, here's how we're going to make decisions. We're going to sit down and have these conversations. Here's who's going to make decisions. And we learned it the hard way as well.
So one of the questions is, how much do you guys butt heads and how much did you butt heads? Is that a good thing or?
Our team, I'm looking at them because they get to witness this all the time. No.
Is that actually sent by your team?
Probably, yeah. No. I mean, so I think Shradha nailed it, actually. Look, we all were committed. That was big. You want to go to war with people who are committed. And starting a company is going to war. I mean, make no doubt about it. You're in the trenches and you're being attacked. And if you don't know that's the worst sign. Each day is attacking you, right? That you're not accomplishing things. You're going to war, and you need to go to war with people who are committed and who refuse to lose. So we had that. I think all three of us were deeply committed to what we wanted to do. And there was a comfort level there and a chemistry there. What we did wrong, that we always try to counsel entrepreneurs about, is we weren't very good at roles, right? I mean, in the beginning, you're taught titles don't matter. They're boxes to pack. You get down, you pack them. I mean, we made our furniture together. You just don't think about titles a whole lot. And so we had me and Shradha and Derek, our other co-founder there. And Derek and I dropped out, and Shradha joined us and was with us. And so the three of us were always there. But as we scaled, it was really a big hindrance to our growth and scaling to not have clarity with regard to role. So over time, Shradha ended up doing a lot of our marketing and media. And Derek was just naturally our finance and IT person, right? And I was the guy who just rode on their coattails. And I had the best job. But after that, Shradha, it turned out, was working on the things that we were doing better than everybody else as an executor. Financial reporting, we didn't want to innovate that too much. We wanted to use GAAP. And so we needed a traditional controller and CFO like Jim back there. IT, we didn't want to create our own VoIP system, which we felt like we were doing at the time, right? You got to focus on what it is that you really want to innovate and bring to the table. And then with the rest, bring in, traditional talent.
Talk a little bit about those the early people you added to the team. What was the secret to attracting them when you were still fledgling as a company, and what was the secret to sort of identifying the ones who would be helpful and really help you grow the business?
So I think I'd say our winning, our kind of success there came out of the failure. So we were bad at the role thing in the beginning. We flipped a quarter for titles in Scott Blixen's office, our attorney at the time at McGuire Woods. That's how we picked titles. They just didn't matter to us. And as we scaled, we quickly understood how much they mattered. And as a result, we've become really, really good about defining roles. We have 9 discrete departments that do very tight and specific things. They're measured, they're focused, so that's become a real talent. When you join, you're not just a generalist doing whatever. You're adding value in a specific way. So that was key. I think energy...
And was equity a part, cash, just being a part of the excitement? Like, what do you think brought the early people to you?
I think for us, a lot of it was culture. Something that we invested in early was really defining our values, our mission. Why are we doing what we're doing? How are we doing it? A culture of transparency, a culture of shared ownership. Definitely defined roles, but within that, having a lot of creativity. I think having that set culture, a lot of our interviews, and it was true then, it's true now, we hire based on personality fits. We hire based on attitude. Skills matter, they need to get the job done, but that's just the pre-qualifier to meet with us. Our interview process is probably one of the lengthier processes around too. We do it very quickly.
How many people do you have now?
We have just under 50 between New York and Chicago. We have a New York office. We do still have at least 6 or 7 different people meet each candidate. So it's definitely a direct manager, peer-to-peer, and reports, and the exec team. So we actually have, by the time a candidate's hired, they know most of the people in the company, they know the culture, they know what they like, what they don't like. A lot of times, if we don't see excitement back from them, we don't pursue them. Because if they're not excited about us, there's no point in us being excited just about them either, because it needs to be a two-way kind of falling in love together, for them with us and for us with them. And so really investing, defining, and communicating a culture was key for us to get the right talent. We didn't get it right the first time. We did go through a couple of rounds, and now everyone, and we were just chatting before the session as well, a lot of people want to work at startups, and that's great. I think starting at universities, with conferences, with things like 1871, there's a lot more initiative, exposure, education, awareness of startups. When we started in 2006, most people wanted to go in stable, quote-unquote, stable jobs, which when the markets crashed, that concept flipped on its head, and that was helpful too. So there were things that needed to get done. We hired people saying, here's what we need to get done. We also need great talent to execute and deliver on everything else that we've been saying. And in some ways, it's a three-sided market. You're selling to the advertiser and to the doctor. You also need the right people to now help you get things done. And while defining roles, we're also very open and non-hierarchical. Packing boxes, we've done it. Stuffing DVDs in envelopes, we've done it. We've never asked anyone in our company to do something that we haven't done ourselves, whether it's signing up a practice, bringing on a sponsor, picking up phones, answering to contact us, emails, and I think that, again, leading from the front was a key component of our culture. And when people talk to us and when they saw that, kind of just leading by example, first to work, last to leave, they really, either they bought it or they didn't. And not everyone did, but those that did, they make for a great team for us.
I will say, Pat, you asked about the founders butting heads. I feel like that's probably going to be some of you in the audience right now. I'll share something that really helped us out of our culture. It's a culture of paradoxes. Shradha and I argue more than, humanly imaginable. Almost every meeting, right? And she's usually right. But we're constantly arguing. So there's intense debate. But the unity from a founding team that we've had for the last few years since we made some of the changes has enabled so much of our success. And those may sound like contrasting ideas, but they're not. And when you have both and you set the example as founders, the rest of the organization generally follows. You should intensely question each other. But when a decision's made, you should have unity. And that yes, it's hard, but that's the magic that I think great organizations, great teams have. And there's no way you can do it, in my opinion, if you don't lead by example on that. And when you have co-founders, it's an incredible way to set that culture, because it's just by nature of being a co-founder, you're going to be working on a lot, you're going to disagree, and you should set the example for everybody else in your organization of how to handle that.
Yeah. What's also unique about us, neither of us sort of the technical co-founder and the sales co-founder. We both are, doing everything across the organization, in a lot of ways flipping roles from time to time to get fresh perspective. I think we benefited a lot from that, from knowing that we had each other to discuss things and to lead. And most of our discussions happened with our team leads, with our team. So it's a very transparent decision-making process. It's not top-down. But from a co-founder standpoint, I think just having mutual respect and trust, and knowing that if someone thinks it's a certain way to go, you may think differently. But once you decide that let's try it this way, we're always on the same page.
That's really important. Really important.